Hey everybody, here we are with what are we on, Monica?
Number four, I believe.
Number 4. Okay. Takes a long time to tell the story of one's life, whether
I guess so.
the whole life or just part of it in a group, right? It takes some time, and so we're going to begin tonight wherever Monica feels like she wants to start, and let's just go ahead and begin.
All right, so I think left off, sorry about that, left off with my first spouse and kind of how that ended and kind of the mindset that I was in because I was still in New Testament Christian Church. And although he had left and the way he left and things like that, it was kind of I was still in. I was still gung ho for New Testament Christian Church. I had, I think it was 2.5 years after the divorce was final. 2.5 years after the divorce was final, my second spouse and I started talking on the wall. And
So
I think I,
how does that happen? So as far as, did you like shoot loving glances across the room, or did someone sidle up to you and say, "Hey, Monica, what do you think of him?"
so actually it was somebody that we mutually knew had come to me the night that he was going to ask. And I don't know if they knew or what it was, but they had mentioned something about brother so and so wanting to talk with me. And it was the first I had really known about it. So I went to fellowship, and sure enough, he had went and to Davis to get permission to talk with me.
Can you set up that whole scene for anyone who's not familiar with why it had to be fellowship, what was fellowship at the time, and
Sure.
about permission? Just, a quick overview.
Yes. That's good because a lot of us that were in, we understand what I just said, but those that weren't in won't fully understand. So after a church service on certain nights, maybe this was a Thursday night, um, the church, or those that don't have children to go to school the next day, you can't have children there that go to school the next day. I know that's the way it was at this point in time. I don't know if it's changed. We would go to what was called the fellowship hall. At the time, it might have a little kitchenette or something like that in. Tables were like 6-foot tables with chairs. Were all scooted up into, so you had long lines of tables with chairs on both sides. The wall consisted of two chairs together up against one of the walls. And they might set up a few, depending on how many couples there were talking on the wall, they would set up so many chairs, groups. And so,
Did you have like a table to put a cup of
no,
coffee on or something?
oh no, there's
Mm.
no table, there's just two chairs.
Okay. Wow.
Yes, and the backs of the chairs are up against a wall.
Oh, it was
And
set
so,
up like that at the time. Okay, gotcha.
yes, yes. So
I
I think
think
that's
there's
why
been different configurations through time.
probably, and I think that's why they say you're talking on the wall is
Right.
because the backs of the chairs are up against the wall.
Wow.
So you're on the wall. I guess that's their term for it,
Yeah.
courting. And so the he went and got permission from Davis for us to talk.
And Davis is the founder of NTCC.
Correct. And so he has to ask permission from him
And
to see
how
if
how old was that second husband? Like 13 or 15 or something that he's asking permission?
yes, that's a good question. He was 42, previously married. had two children of his own that were nearly adults, and had been serving God for many years. I was 38 years old, had been married before, had a teenage son, and had been serving the Lord for many, many years. Neither one of us were in Bible college. Like I said, I had graduated in 93. And I can't remember when my second spouse had graduated. I was not around when he had graduated. So, but he had been out into a church works in various places and things like that. So it's not like we were young and dumb and immature.
Right.
Or even in school, they like to use that, they have to be on the wall if you're in Bible college or seminary.
Right. And we saw through the years a lot of couples who were divorced, because there's a high divorce rate and remarriage rate in this group. And we saw a lot of people in your similar situation, I would say, right, that sat on the wall.
Yes, exactly. So, so yeah, I was shocked at the fact that we had to get permission at the time, but it's all under the guise of we're just trying to protect you.
Mm.
This is for your own good. And it made you feel that, well, you weren't mature enough or proved your maturity in Christ in not long enough to be allowed to make your own decisions, or, to be an adult, really.
Right, because if you believe, if your pastor, who was Davis, believed you were two people who were real Christians, and if God comes to live in Christians and keeps them, then, it's like, fly, birdie, fly. Like, go off like your kids or anybody. You trust them. Like if you can't trust them there in front of you, like right there in Graham, how can you trust them to go start a church or do anything?
Right, right. Well, there's that always, you're always asking permission to do things. That's the name of the game. It's always a permission thing. So we talked a handful of times, and then got married.
A handful of times at about, let's do the math, at about how many minutes or hours each time?
I would say an hour.
5 hours, 6 hours.
So
No phone calls, no letter writing or anything.
We were not allowed to call each other. We were not allowed to talk outside the church, and we were not allowed to write letters.
Wow. Mm.
Yeah. So it's a control. It's very controlling.
Yes.
But it's under the guise of we are protecting you.
Mm-hmm.
This is for your own protection, and it was even to the point, like, he had asked me to marry him, and I said yes, and so I had a ring on my finger, and we were allowed to go together to get our marriage license, and I thought, in my mind, well, man, we're engaged to get married. So I'll hold, maybe we can hold hands on the way to us going to get our marriage license. And he wouldn't even hold my hand. He was afraid.
Wow.
Because he wanted to keep it so proper. And we had never kissed. We did not. Our first kiss was the time when Davis said, "You may kiss the bride." That was our first kiss.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. At 38 and 42.
Did you feel ridiculous sitting on the wall? Or did everyone else kind of fade into the background after a while?
There's the snickering and, oh, who's the new couple on the wall, There's
Right.
always the little snickering and jesting kind of thing, And that happens, especially among the women. Oh, look who's on the wall. She said yes, and all this stuff. And really, as an adult, I didn't understand why I wasn't trusted I had already been in this organization since '88, and here this was in 2005, and I felt like I wasn't trusted. I felt like um, all these years that I had been in that church organization, why was my salvation questioned at the fact that I wasn't trusted to date on my own. I had to, everything had to be checked and balanced, and everything had to be granted permission for us to do these things. And so that really did bother me.
Yes.
Um,
Let me ask you this question. You said when you married your first husband that you knew after 24 hours you'd made a bad decision. So going into this second one, did you feel you learned any lessons? Did you feel pressure to uh, become unsingle and to be a preacher's wife and to hook up with someone to go do a work and help fulfill his calling?
did I feel, I'm not sure I quite understand your question. Did I feel like I was persuaded to marry another
Well,
minister?
so here you said after the first time, after 24 hours, you pretty much realized this wasn't a great move. And you explain reasons. So usually we like to learn lessons from the first. We don't always.
Right.
Almost never, probably, but especially the time lapse between. But did you feel like, was there pressure put on you from any outside source to say, you know, let's get you married, let's get you, come on, let's go here, or was this just all on your own? Like you felt like because you were in the environment of this organization, you you know we can't judge it from the outside. You have to say these were two people within an organization that this was the dynamic. You weren't going to have more than 8 to 10 hours of knowing someone
Right.
before you were going to get married. Did you feel pressure to say yes, or you really honestly just wanted to say yes?
No, I really honestly wanted to say yes.
Okay.
But here's the thing too is you cannot date or marry anybody outside of New Testament Christian church.
Good point.
So you have to look within the church organization. And because I still felt called to be a preacher's wife, the man I was going to marry, again, I felt that it needed to be important. It was important to me that they were called in the ministry. So that was important to me. Um, I thought I had given myself ample time to heal from my last marriage, that 2.5 years. And I was on the wall with another brother before I was on the wall with my second spouse.
Okay.
And I felt that wasn't a good fit for me. And I had, let that brother know, hey, this just not. So it wasn't like my second spouse was my first option.
Gotcha.
So I was trying to be, I had read some books, about certain things, but.
Wait a minute. Read books about certain things. That's intriguing. Books about what?
Making wrong decisions of, marry a partner and
right.
and looking at yourself. Why did you make these decisions? And I was trying not to make the same mistake I made the first time.
Right.
So and it seemed so good. Everything seemed so. And I would say this a lot, even to my closest friend at the time. I'm like, everything seems so perfect. Everything, how I got a dress, and then somebody gave me shoes that matched it, and they didn't know that they were going to match. Just things seemed to be so perfect. And I remember saying that word often, before we got married, that everything was so perfect. And and stuff like that. Well, we got married on a Thursday after church, again at the fellowship hall. um, Davis and Olson were the two that married us, and
What month was that in 2005?
it was July 21st
Oh,
of 2005.
we weren't there. We were in Virginia then. Okay, I was wondering
Yeah,
if I had been there.
yeah. No, it was just a fellowship after service. There wasn't a whole lot of people there, and it was the dress I had was a dress you could wear to church anytime. It wasn't anything fancy, and or anything like that. I didn't have flowers or anything like that. We'd actually planned on getting married the Friday after at like the office, and it was the first day. Reverend Davis had been out of town for a number of weeks, and we had already went to get our marriage license, and you have to wait, I think it was at the time 5 days after you get your license, then you can get married, something like that. I could be wrong on the dates, on the days, but so we were legal to get married on that Thursday, and it just so happened Reverend Davis had come back. He was in town. He had just gotten into town that day, so that was the first service with him there. And my second spouse had went to tell him that we had gotten our marriage license and things like that. They kind of talked amongst themselves before service about getting married that night. I had no clue until after service.
How'd you feel about that?
I felt, well, I wasn't ready. I was going to take the day Friday off from work and prepare for my wedding.
Right.
My friend was gonna, my closest friend at the time was gonna make me an arrangement, a bridal bouquet, and things like that. But things that didn't happen. We were rushed.
So it's not like the typical like bridezilla that she is in control and she plans everything and it's her day, it's her special moment. This is kind of turned upside down on that.
Completely. I've either one of my marriages. I've been married twice and have never put on a wedding gown.
Right.
I've been married twice and have never had a bridal bouquet. And so it's nothing. The first marriage we had some flowers, but the gal messed up on them, and it was like two corsages that we put together. It wasn't a legit bridal bouquet. So yeah, so it's not like, no. And really, when I was in at the beginning of the 80s, 90s, and things like that, big weddings with big gowns and things like that was really frowned on. But I think they allow that now. So.
Oh man, they marry all kinds of people outside the church now. Like,
oh,
well, I mean, they're in, but they're not in. They're not showing signs of outward holiness.
Okay.
I started to notice that as I went through Facebook pages, but the thing that's interesting for you is that here's your husband to be and your pastor, and they're making this decision and not even including you in on it. Like,
right, I was
like you're almost like property or something. Like, I'd like to buy that goat in your yard and take it home and milk it. Like
yeah. That's since you mentioned property, that's how I felt with my second marriage. I was just property. I was just an expendable spouse is how I felt. An expendable spouse because of how the organization looks at marriage.
How does it look at marriage?
So, and this is actually what happened with the end of the second marriage because, and I knew this was one of the biggest fears that I had when I had decided to tell him, it's been 5 years ago now, that I could no longer be in New Testament Christian Church. I could no longer be a part of them. I could no longer participate in the services and be in the ministry under New Testament Christian Church because of the a lot of the abuse that I saw and a lot of other things. And I could no longer, as a Christian, I could no longer be a part of it. And that was one of my biggest fears, was that the marriage was going to be over.
Right.
And so, because their philosophy is if you leave, and even a year or two after I had left the organization, my second spouse came to me and said, "Do you remember when we were on the wall? We had a conversation. I told you if you left the organization, our marriage was over."
During those 5 hours that you were talking, did you remember that?
I told him, I said, I just looked at him honestly and I said, "I don't remember the conversation, but I don't doubt that it happened.
Right.
But you show me in the Bible where that's biblical. You show me in the Bible where that's a biblical reason to divorce your spouse."
Right.
And he just looked at me and turned around and walked off. It's not biblical. It's not in the Bible. And although he did threaten me with divorce many, many, many times during our marriage, if you don't agree 100%, because you are treated like property. So if you don't do or say everything that they expect you to do or say, then it's, if you don't like it, leave. If you don't like it, leave.
I think what's interesting, Moníca, right now, what's coming to my mind is we were just speaking before we started recording about how Davis was the supposed pastor. He set himself up as the pastor of us all. And you related in the last recording about how you and your first husband went to the Keckles. You thought you were going to meet with Mike and have some sort of like counseling thing. You related, and I know other people have as well since they've heard the recording, that there was no like counseling. There was not this thing of importance or priority to keep these marriages together, to bring the husband and wife in the office, say, "Hey, come on, guys." So I think when you have that type of atmosphere set up, that opens the door for your second husband to start saying stuff like that all the time. I'm going to divorce you.
And so that's the mentality of New Testament Christian Church. The wife is always to submit.
Yeah.
It's preached on constantly. The wife is to submit. The wife is to submit. The wife is to submit. And the children are to obey. The children are to obey. The children are to obey.
Yes.
Very, very, very rarely do you hear any biblical teaching of what a husband is supposed to do. How the husband is supposed to love his wife. How the husband is supposed to treat his wife. How the husband is supposed to do these things. Very rarely do you hear that.
Right, it is rare.
But you will constantly hear about how rebellious women are, how they are to submit, and how the children are to obey and submit. You will hear that over and over and over again.
And a lot of that was in Davis's classes.
Yes. Yes. So the leadership is like that. So there's not an equal balance. There's not a balance there. And so you've got this mindset where these men end up treating their wives like they're a piece of property, and if they don't like it, they can boot them out on the side of the street like a piece of trash to get another one.
Right.
And and that's the overall mentality. I'm not saying everybody is like this with their spouse. I'm not saying that at all. But that's the overall mindset, I think, of the leadership all the way down.
Right.
And so, because even my first spouse would always tell me, if I don't leave, or he would threaten with a divorce constantly. And so, and even my second spouse was constantly there was times where I thought this was it. He's gonna really leave or kick me out of the house. My
What?
second spouse, his big thing was because he paid the bills and because bought was buying the house and he bought all this. You have no right to stay there. So he would kick me out. I have to be the one that leaves. Well, when in this organization, a woman is not allowed to work. It's a sin.
Yeah.
So what are you supposed to do? Where are you supposed to go? You don't have any money.
Right.
The job skills, where are those? Because you're not allowed to work. So you're stuck. You feel so isolated. You feel, and then there's the question, oh my God, here I am again. Why did I allow myself to get here again?
And what can I ask you a question? These things that he would threaten you, to dissolve the marriage over, were they big things? Were they just normal marriage things, you would say? Although you may not know what normal marriage things are, honestly.
Unfortunately, I don't think I do know what normal. They weren't big things. No, they were. I would say with my first spouse, we argued and fought a lot. With my second spouse, we did not argue that much. We very rarely argued. We very rarely had anything. But it's like, okay, what we might argue over is how come he didn't make sure that the electric bill was paid?
Ugh.
So now we don't have now our electric's been shut off. How come our water bill didn't get paid for 3 months? Because now our water's turned off. And so, especially when he's making the money, especially when he has a really good job, and because, the women, again, are not allowed, you're not a man if you don't pay your own bills, kind of is also part of the organization.
Well, let me
And
ask you this. When that happened, where he didn't pay the bills, was he in Graham? Was he a licensed minister? Was he in the pulpit?
he was a licensed ordained minister.
Ordained.
He's my second spouse. As of when our divorce was final, he was a licensed ordained minister.
Wow.
He's not pastoring a church, he is a worker.
Right.
But he is a licensed ordained minister.
But at the time, when he wasn't paying his bills, he was a licensed minister.
Yes, he was a licensed ordained minister.
That's crazy.
Because even the day after I told him, it was June of, it was a Sunday of June of last year of 22, when I told him the marriage is done. I can no longer do this. I'm not mad. I'm just done. I can no longer live this way. That was a Sunday. The next day, Monday, he had already told me days before this happened. He had told me that everything was current, that he had paid all the bills and everything was current. Okay, so I'm believing him. He was trying to work on getting the bills paid on time. He's got a really good job. The money is there. It's not that he doesn't have the money. Okay.
Right.
So that's not the problem. And so I trusted him. I believed him. And then that Sunday, I told him the marriage is done. I just cannot. I'm not mad. I'm not angry. I'm just done. I just cannot do this anymore. And the next day, I had a part-time job. I was getting ready for work, and as I'm getting ready for work, the power goes out.
Oh.
And so right away, I'm like, oh my God, he didn't pay the bill. And then I'm telling myself, no, Monica, he told you he's paying it. Maybe something, the power went out. Somebody hit a telephone a line or something like that. Don't think negative. Don't think negative. Well, then, there's the pile of bills that are never opened that are on his desk. And so I started going through it. And sure enough, the bill had not been paid for 3 months. And so I texted to him, hey, the power's out. You told me you were paying stuff. Apparently you're still lying to me. And you're not doing what you said you were going to. You told me the other day this is what you were doing, and you lied to me. And now the power is off, and it hasn't been paid in 3 months. So that was, and then he always, I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry doesn't cut it anymore.
No.
You've been telling me this for years. Nothing changes. You still lie and nothing changes. So, you know, this is one of the reasons why I'm done, kind of thing. So,
Now, how many years were you married before you left the church?
oh, how many years? Let's see. I was married 17 years total, and when I left, four. So,
Okay.
so I would say about 13 years.
Okay. And during the time before you left the church, so was there still this kind of behavior from him, or did
Oh, yeah.
things get worse when you said you didn't want to go anymore?
He had a lot of anger issues when we first got married that I didn't know about. Um, so I had witnessed him punching holes in walls with his anger. He really mistreated our dogs to the point where he would just beat them with his fists and things like that, and I'd have to go on the bat and just say, "Hey, hey, hey, stop! You know, you're killing this dog," basically. And things like that. He would, so there was a lot of anger issues. Those things did get better over time. But it is still, you know, like I remember we had not been married a full year and we went out into work as he was pastoring. We took over work. And I remember in that city, we were only there for a very, very short time, 1 year, before we went to the second work we were in and we were there, well, he's still there, and for quite a few years. And he had gotten mad. I don't know what it was, if it was money. He had gotten really mad, and I was serving him supper. I had made supper, and we're sitting down at the table to eat, and he got really mad, and he slammed his hand down, and it hit his plate, and it broke the plate. It just shattered the plate on the table, and it actually slit his wrist open. Excuse me, it slit his wrist open, and he had to. I was so upset of what he had done, and I just looked at him like I didn't even take him to the hospital because he was accusing. I don't know what it was about, but he took himself to the hospital, and they had wrapped it up, stitched it up, and things like that. So it was things like this that he was just very angry.
Hmm.
An angry person would often, through the years, gloat or talk about how the reason why he joined the military was because he could legally kill people. And things like this. So he's that type of person, individual. And um, so it was things like that over the years. His anger issues did get better, but for instance, like I told him that I would get migraines before we got married, and so just to let him know, what I go through. So he was fully informed before we got married, and there was one time I get migraines to the point at times where I can't function.
Right.
I can't do anything, but just take some Excedrin migraine and just go to bed. I can't. If I am up, sometimes I can't hardly walk. They're very debilitating. And so there were times, this happened twice, but the first time it happened, I was just blown away. I was in bed. I was just out for the day because of a migraine. And he'd come home from work and told me I was a lazy bitch because I did not wash his laundry.
Wow.
And I was so, he wasn't concerned if I had eaten that day or what condition I was in. And I was so blown away. I was just like, is this really, am I seeing this? Am I hearing this? Is this really happening? I was questioning myself as to, did he really say this to me because of my migraine? I didn't get up and wash his dirty underwear.
But he'd not done that to you before.
This was the first time that he had done this. He would do different stuff. So occasionally he would throw my stuff away, and just
What?
it was right. So even like there's something I was looking for when I was moving, and it's just gone. It's just disappeared, and I'm like, well, he probably threw that away. But that would happen a lot. Is there was like no respect. Occasionally, he would just throw something of mine away or just trash
Well, it
it.
wasn't yours, was it? It was his.
Well, I don't know. Just things like that were, yeah. And so anyhow, in my mind, I was just with this laundry thing. I thought, well, if he does this to me again, I'm just going to ask him just so I can clarify it in my own brain to bring logic to it. And I would say within a year or two, year and a half, I would say within a year and a half, it happened again. And so when it happened the second time, where tells me I'm nothing but a lazy bitch because I didn't wash his dirty laundry that day because I had a migraine that put me to bed, debilitating. I just came out and asked him, I said, like, so let me make sure I understand what you're saying here is that you are calling me this because I was so sick I could not function because of my migraine, and are you upset that I didn't get your laundry done, so you're calling me this? And he just looks at me and turns around and walks away. And so I'm like, okay, that was the last time I ever did his laundry.
Oh, is that right?
I never did his laundry again after that.
Did he only own like 2 pieces of laundry that you being down one day?
No, no, there was, but I was like, you know what, fella, you just lost the privilege of me doing your laundry.
There's no tender-heartedness in that kind of behavior.
And so, when my second spouse and I got married, I got up every morning. I made him breakfast. I made him a lunch. I would clean the house all day. Well, and I made him desserts. I made him his dinner. He came home. There was always dinner on the table. I did all these things for him.
Right.
And through the years, he would do like with the laundry. He would, say something or do something that was just so degrading that I quit getting up in the morning and doing breakfast. Dude, if that's the way you're going to treat me, I'm not doing that anymore for you. And so I think I believe over the years, things just were just, and then when I never even had to tell him that I was no longer doing his laundry. I just quit doing it. And it was like he just knew. Because when I had asked him, I was like, am I reading this right? Am I understanding this right? Kind of thing. With this laundry thing. And he wouldn't say a word. He just turned around and walked off. Then I know, yeah, that's exactly what he meant.
Wow.
He didn't have to say anything. And so I just left his laundry there and never did it. And he had to do it. So he lost to me, I don't know. You get to a point where you're sick and tired of being abused, and if you're not gonna appreciate the blessing that you have. You
right, and at the same time, you need to stand up for yourself because now you have a history of it going on, and when does it stop? It stops when I mean it's a small thing to make a stand like that, but it reverberates through your life and can help you do that in other areas.
Right, exactly. And so there was no argument. I just quit doing it and just kept my mouth shut. I just didn't say anything because I knew he didn't, and see, this is the thing too, is there was no care for me. There was no concern for me, which also leads me to another thing. He was in the military, so he has VA benefits. It was always, he would always complain about it's too expensive to purchase medical insurance for me. Through his jobs, through the work that he had. Well, the job that he's got now, the medical insurance is not that expensive. And he's got VA benefits, but through his job, he purchased medical insurance for himself in addition to his VA benefits, but did not purchase medical insurance for me.
Wow.
And so it's just things like that. I was the one, you know, I would say, let's see, we were there. I would say after 4 years of being in this work, 4 or 5, I had just made some homemade jams. I made some homemade jams and jellies. I've always done that. And we had went to the farmer's market, and I saw how much it was selling. And so I was like, holy cow, I just made like gold bricks at home. That's how I thought.
Right.
So I thought, wow, what is it going to take for me to make some homemade jams and jellies and sell them at a farmer's market or whatever? But as I was looking into the food cottage laws and all that, I still asked my spouse for permission to do this, to see if I could make homemade jams and jellies, basically start a little business.
Right.
I still asked him for permission to do so. Because, you know, what your husband says is what goes. So, but with that little job that I had, I didn't have medical insurance. He never gave me $5 a week or whatever to go spend on a coffee or a tea or whatever while you're out grocery shopping.
Really?
And things like that. No, I never had spending money ever. And so that's why I started this little jamming business, is because I was like, well, I could have my own little spending money. I could, you know.
And little did you know there were other ladies at that time in the organization who were doing side hustles, whether it was reupholstering or Shakeology or, you know, did you know about any quilting and selling?
No, I did not know other women were doing that.
Right.
But my idea was, well, if my husband said I could do it, then nobody could,
right,
you know, shake their finger at me and say you're sinning.
Right.
Because women aren't supposed to work outside the home. But that's because I got permission from my husband, so he said I could. So, and I didn't tell a lot of people in the church what I was doing.
So all this time, these stories you're telling about having the migraine and all, and this stuff and the laundry and everything, being called lazy, that was while he was pastoring?
That was while he was an ordained licensed minister as a worker.
Okay.
So the majority of our time in this last work, well, the whole time, with the exception of 1 year, he's been a worker.
Okay.
Yeah. The first year we were out there, it was in the same state but a different city, and he was the pastor there. We were only there for 1 year. They shut that work down, and then we went to the other side of the state where it is now.
Okay.
Located.
Gotcha.
Right. So.
So what happened with the jam business? Did it do well?
It did very well.
Mm.
It did very well, and it grew every year. It grew and grew. I had. It gave me the ability to buy my own clothes. it gave me the ability to provide for myself with little things like my own clothes, supplements that I needed. Um, Anytime I needed to go to a doctor, I didn't have medical insurance, but I would pay for it out of my little jam business, out of my little money, my little flower business that I had.
Right.
That's if I needed eyeglasses or anything like that. I bought my own glasses. Um, that's where that all came from. And so I had this little tiny income. I mean, good Lord, it was very small, but you squirrel away a few bucks here and there, to get your eyeglasses or, and things like that. So, or dental work. I didn't have dental insurance and that, yeah. So,
Wow.
and I never went to counsel for anything because all my counseling experiences from my first spouse, I was like, it was a joke.
Right. It was non-existent.
Right. I didn't tell anybody in the organization what was going on because it just it was such a joke. There's no counsel. There's no help for anybody. It just seemed like it created more problems.
Yes.
If you did tell anybody. So it was, you're on your own. Pretty much you're on your own. And
so what's the point of a pastor, right? To get Starbucks from the church members, I guess, and fresh veggies from the garden.
Right, the tithe. Yeah, it is. There's no counsel. So I learned from my first spouse, it was a waste of time, and in some cases, it caused more problems.
Right.
And so why bother? I wasn't even gonna bother with it because it was a joke. So yeah, over time, there's how I guess I dealt with it on my own. I guess over time I was like, okay, this is what you started with, fella. I ironed all your clothes. I did all this stuff. You started with this woman who absolutely did everything but shine your shoes, and over the years, in my mind, he lost the privileges of it.
Right.
Because of the abuse. If he wanted, I'm just not going to do that anymore.
And clearly, he didn't tell on you that you know of, right? And say, Pastor Davis, my wife is not doing this, this, and that. Because maybe then he'd have to tell on himself.
Right, exactly. Well, what's the reason behind it all? That's the reason, So yeah, that's how I dealt with it. Looking back now, looking back, I was like, dude, you had it made when we got married, but over the years, from abuse and things like that, you want to sit there and curse at me, and things like that.
How does someone like that get up in a pulpit and say anything?
Well,
like let's take NTCC out of it. Let's take the cult out of it. Just a man, if he really believes he was called to preach and called to be loving, to love his wife as Christ loved the church, right? How does he do the opposite? And then did he ever get up and lead a service even? Or preach a service,
I remember one service, there was something going on. I don't even remember what it was. There's so many things. Sometimes I just don't even remember. There was something going on within our relationship or something, and he got up over the pulpit and was preaching on it.
What?
In a way, right? And I was like, oh my God.
No, wait. Was he making it seem like he was talking about his own relationship, or was he couching it?
It was big, but
okay.
Because I knew, it was like an argument or something we were having.
Oh.
So he gets up and preaches about it. Nobody else knew, but I know what he's talking about and referencing. And trying to make me look like I'm the bad person and all this, and that it's whatever was going on. And afterwards, I was like, don't ever do that to me again. That was so uncalled for. That was so ungod. That was not God whatsoever.
No, it's cowardly bullyism, which we see a lot of in that organization.
Right. It's not God.
No.
It's not the Holy Spirit.
Nope.
You think you're man enough to go outside and preach over the pulpit to try and straighten your wife out from the home? You know, you can't do it at home, but you think you can do it over the pulpit.
Right.
You know, and it's just like, no, I'm not going there. Maybe I got just a little, I don't know, talking about it now, you look back and it's like, there's just certain things I didn't put up with. I was done, from the previous marriage and stuff. And, well, I'll even say it now, there's a whole lot of stuff I ain't gonna put up with no more in my life.
Right.
There's just, I ain't going there.
And now you've gone public, so we have to hold you to it.
There you go. Y'all keep me held accountable.
If I see you sitting on a wall with some dude, I'm going to yank you by the scruff of your neck, woman, and I'm going to pull you out of there.
That's hilarious. Because that ain't ever going to happen. I'm
Like,
going to church to sit on the wall.
Even if you're at the local VFW for a dance with some old people, and I see you...
Well, that's another thing, is I don't know how to dance.
No, huh?
Because that was one of the things in the cult, no worldly dancing. And I didn't go to any dancing or do any dancing before.
But you knew how to jump. You could jump.
Jump up and down, is that dancing? Oh my gosh.
Hopping. Little bunny rabbit. You could do the bunny hop.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's a lot of things that, like, how do you really date when you've never really dated before?
Right. Yeah, that is, yeah. I've heard a lot from young people who are in their maybe 30s who grew up in the church who, when they got out, the whole culture, like they did not realize how, and this is not like fodder for people in NTCC to say, oh, see, they just want the world. No, it has to do with, you have to be in the world. You don't live on a cloud somewhere like a crazy person.
Exactly.
But to get into it, like some of these young girls working for the very first time and having to acclimate themselves to how things go on and conversations people are having about just maybe some normal TV show or music group or something going on in the community, and they don't know. It's like they're an alien from another planet.
Yes, I remember my son has made a lot of comments to me when he was growing up as a teenager about things like that.
Yeah.
How difficult it was for him.
Mm-hmm.
And
they stick out. They feel like they stick out like a sore thumb.
Right. Exactly. So, so that's kind of how our marriage was for 17 years. And even after, so there was abuse before I left, to the point, like, I remember one time he was threatening me with divorce and things like that. If you don't like it, leave. And I remember when we first got married, he had worked for a builder out in Graham area, and he would get really, really, really great bonuses, like $6,000 bonuses every 6 months.
What?
Oh God, it was great. So
I'm in the wrong business.
Right, and so on top of pay and all this other stuff, and so I remember that first Christmas we were together. So we were married July. That first December, he went and bought all kinds of stuff. This, like a love bombing kind of situation, and bought all kinds of stuff. He bought his daughter all kinds of stuff. He bought my son all kinds of stuff. He bought me china, all this china, brand new china, and sewing machine, and just all kinds of stuff, right? All brand new. And
Things you be a wife with.
right, exactly. And so, um, so I remember. So here we are, fast forward many years later, and he's threatening me with a divorce and things like that. I'm like, I'm scrambling because I'm like, I have no money. I have. What am I gonna do? Where am I gonna go? So I remember selling some of that stuff and just on Facebook Marketplace and stuff like that, just to try and get myself some money because I was afraid he was going to kick me out of the house.
Oh my
And
goodness.
because it's my house, blank, 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 curse word, curse word, curse word. You're the one that has to leave. I'm the one that pays the money here. I'm the one it's my money. I'll do whatever I want with it, and stuff like that. So, um, I remember just trying to sell stuff off really quick just to try and get something together so I wasn't, left with nothing.
Now,
And
at this point, when you're doing this, you are in or out of NTCC?
I think at this point I was in.
Okay.
I was in.
Okay.
So, he'd always threaten divorce, or if you don't like it, leave. That was always a thing. I always felt like a what is it? An exposable,
Expendable.
expendable wife. That's how I felt. If you don't like it, leave. He'll just go get another one.
Right.
That was the mentality, and things like that. So, he's the man of the house, and you'll do what I say, and if you don't like it, leave. And there was never, it was a lot like that. So yeah. So anyhow, I would say, in between the time that I left, I was still in the organization. At one point, there was some people pastoring the church there that
you were helping.
Yeah, we were helping. We were workers under them, and they had come in to take the work over. And from when they came in, the church there was a lot of people there. It was doing very, very well. By the time they left, there was one church member left that they really.
What was the reason they had to come in the first place? Was there another pastor there, or were you guys pastoring?
No, there was another pastor there, and they had actually left the organization.
Okay.
So they had called in another minister and his wife to come in and take over the work. And so when they came in, they had a church building. They had lots of families. The church was thriving. They had lots and lots of families, and things like that. Lots of people were coming, and so I would say within the first year, it was heartbreaking to see how they treated people. And
how did they treat people?
There was other workers and stuff there. They left the organization.
Wow.
And a lot of the people that were in the church left. Excuse me. As a matter of fact, while they were there, I had almost left the organization as well because of the treatment and how they treated people. When some people sometimes have an attitude of who they are because of what they've done in the organization, and they're really puffed up and lifted up in pride.
Like what they've done? What did they do that was memorable?
At one point, this end of the minister had been a Bible college instructor.
Oh boy.
And so,
we know now almost anyone can do No training is needed.
Yeah, no schooling, no,
No,
yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, and so um, it was so heartbreaking to see how they treated people. And
Can
um,
you can you be specific with that? Like, for example, when they came in, because I don't know.
okay.
Okay, so when they came in and they set up shop, um, what do you think were the things that started to rub people the wrong way?
I would say sometimes there's an there is this, and I've seen it in other people, other ministers' wives. I've seen it, and I've had people, other ministers' wives, make comments over the years to me about certain things that, you know, are they really saved? Always questioning people's salvation.
Hmm.
Um, if they're not living the standards. So, for those that are listening that may not know, in New Testament Christian Church, when we're referring to outward holiness, we're referring to the women are now not allowed to wear makeup, not allowed to wear jewelry, not allowed to wear pants. You are to have long, uncut hair. Um, I think you can wear a wedding ring and a watch. No short sleeves, no short skirts or dresses. Um, women or men are to have short hair and pants. Um, that is what they consider outward holiness. So they consider your appearance as holy before God. And because I think we've been kind of tossing those terms around, and people may not be like, what do they mean by that? So, so if you aren't living up to their standard, then you're not saved.
Because it's judged by that. That's
Right.
I
Your
think
salvation
Kekel
is
even said
judged.
that right in a recent service that um, he actually contradicted himself in two sentences, saying it's not about this, but it is an indication of what's going on inside. So
Right.
so it is. It
Right.
is something to judge people by.
It is, and there is a lot of judgment. And my second spouse was very, very, very judgmental about people, and so and there's a spirit behind all that. It's a pharisaical
Yeah.
spirit because they are far more superior and far more better than other people
Mm-hmm.
or other churches and things like that because of their so-called outward holiness. So because of their outward holiness and their judgmental spirit behind them, it really, it actually really it's not of God, and it just is. It's sickening and saddening that there's this judgment toward other people, and that your salvation is basically on a sliding scale, depending on if you're what you're wearing and what you're not wearing.
We've seen through the years, especially in servicemen's works, but what they'll do is over the pulpit or in teaching, kind of jack people up, right?
Right, right. Well. See, this is also another thing. Was I remember it was after I had left the organization. We're still married, and I remember driving down the road where I loved going downtown, the old part of downtown of this town we were in, and they would have sculptures up, and it was they would call it a sculpture walk, to where you could walk from sculpture to sculpture, and they would have a pamphlet. The city would do this. They'd have a pamphlet so you could go and see all these sculptures, and they had just every year they would take down the old ones and they would put up new ones.
Hmm.
And so it was an ongoing thing every year. And so a lot of them were downtown. They were kind of scattered around downtown area. And so I remember it's in the summertime, and so the windows are down. And I remember I mentioned something about, oh, look at that sculpture. It is so cool because I hadn't seen it yet. And we were in the car. And I'm looking at the sculpture. Well, then my spouse says, oh my God, look at her. She looks like a dyke. And about this person, I didn't even know who he was talking. I was like, what? And I'm like, no, I'm talking about the sculpture. What are you talking about? Like, look at this sculpture. And he's like, no, look at that woman. She looks like some lesbo or something, and making all these derogatory statements.
Right.
And I'm like, what are you even talking about? And I had to look to see what he was even talking about because my spirit and my mind was not there.
Right.
Okay. And so I see these two women. I finally look and I see these two women. One of them had really super short hair. And look at her, and I was like shocked. I was just shocked, and I'm like, are you serious? Your mind is so wrapped up into this judgment, this you are better than thou spirit, that I'm talking about a sculpture, a piece of metal, and you can't even see that. All you see is you're passing judgment on this woman that you don't even know her name. You have absolutely no idea what this person is, who she is, anything about her, and you're passing judgment. She's going to die and go to hell because she has short hair, so she's a lesbian.
Right.
Or a dyke. And I started questioning him.
And he's an ordained minister in this organization.
Correct. And so you've got this overall this spirit over this organization that, and they'll even tell you if you leave the organization, you have now become an enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things that kept me in. I don't want to be an enemy to anybody. I don't want to die and go to hell.
Right.
But it's all fear. It's a fear thing. Another thing is if you leave the organization, you will never find a church out there that will ever love you like we love you. And that's a lie from the devil as well.
Yes.
And so I started asking him, I was like, you don't even know that woman. You don't even know who she is. You don't even know, maybe she had cancer and she's just growing her hair out. She lost you don't know anything about this person.
Mm-hmm.
How can you pass judgment? Does that make you look better in your eyes by passing judgment on that person? How can you do that? And as a Christian, you call yourself a minister, a Christian.
What would Jesus do? How does
that make you feel better about yourself by belittling somebody else? And then I don't understand how you think that a Christian is okay for a Christian to behave that way.
Right.
And I'm not even in the organization at this point. And he just was quiet. I wasn't, I was just like, I don't understand your mindset. But that's the overall mindset from the leaders on down in this organization.
You're saying at this point you were out of the org?
Yes, when I was having this conversation with him, we were in the car and he was doing these things and I was like, so we kind of was going down the road a little further and I was like, oh, look at that man. He has long hair, so he's going to die and go to hell because he has his hair's long. I'm like, and there's a woman and she's got shorts on. So now she's going to die and go to hell. You don't know anything about these people. Not only that, but don't you love their souls? How come you're not praying for them?
Yeah.
You're passing judgment on these people you don't even know.
No tender speech comes out of the mouth.
No, not whatsoever. I'm like, and why are you looking at these people like this? You're supposed to be trying to win them for God, and that's how you think of them?
Yeah.
And what is your purpose behind all this? And I was asking him this sincerely, like, I don't understand how you can think this way about people and then you want to try and win them for God when you have this attitude and this spirit about you. I don't. That's one of the reasons why I left the organization, is because of that.
It's a reason why a lot of us left. One of many.
Yes, one of many. Yes,
Yeah, but
exactly.
we're, like people like to say every now and then, they just mimic whatever comes over the pulpit. We're hateful. We're
Right,
bitter.
right.
We're trying to slander. Whatever is the word. They've used the same
Right.
words. I just want to
Okay.
back up a second because
Okay.
I know you're telling bits of a story. I for some reason I like to stay linear sometimes, just
Okay.
for my own sake. Running through my mind are some questions. So when you left the church, it was official. Did anybody from the leadership contact you?
So I knew 5 years before I actually left that I wanted to leave. I knew that, I had seen different things. People treat you like garbage, like because they're better because than you are because of their position in the organization, and you're just a worker, and
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 now
it
you're
was
speaking
really
about those that came to take over in that
right.
city.
And well, and not only that, but I remember also one of the things that bothered me too is I was really close with an individual when I was with my first marriage. Um, the one of the places that we had worked at where he was pastoring, I got really close with another pastor's wife that front in the next state down from us, and we got really close. Like, she had surgery on her thyroid. I went down to help her after her surgery, and I was, helping her throw, just things that happen after surgeries. And I was there for her, and we were very close. Well, then her spouse, her husband, became an overseer, and the whole dynamic of the relationship completely changed.
Mm.
So at conferences, it was like she couldn't talk with me. She couldn't be seen around me. And, at conferences, and there's always where all the board members sit at the front of the church.
Right.
And so they're watching you. So there's always this ongoing behind the scenes where you feel like you're constantly being watched. If you don't raise your hands when you're supposed to raise your hands, if you don't do a certain thing at a certain specific time, they're wondering why. So there's this mechanical part to the services, and
Yes.
things like that. You raise your hands now, you don't raise your hands. You can dance now, but you can't dance there. And so the services are mechanical in certain ways. And
Yes.
and and so here we're at a conference, and I would stop her and say, "Hi, how you doing?" And she's constantly watching, looking over her shoulders, and is she being watched? And the conversations were very short. And so I always, I was like, well, it's not a real friendship. She's afraid to even talk with me
Right.
because I'm not, there's this hierarchy. The overseers and the board members, they all fellowship amongst each other, and then the pastors and their wives fellowship among pastors and their wives, and then the workers, they fellowship among the workers and their wives, and then there's the church members. It's this, you know, steps of all these, you know, and
Levels.
so right, and so it's just little things like that over the years, and I'm like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore because this is not of God.
Yeah.
This is not how God behaves. This is not how, and you're reading your Bible and talking about God loving his children, and you're like, and the fruit of the Spirit, and you start reading all these things, and you're just like, this is not what's happening here. This is not of God. And so I knew 5 years before I left that I no longer wanted to be a part of it. It just took me 5 years to get up enough courage, because I knew I was like, I'm gonna lose my marriage, I'm gonna, become this outcast, and you're going to lose what friendships you have, and you're basically starting all over. And so, um, so I was very fearful. I remember the week. It was like God was telling me, you need to go tell him, you need to go tell him, you need to go tell him. And I couldn't eat. My stomach was just, I was sick to my stomach. I was so fearful, and I couldn't sleep at night that week. And it would be like, okay, I'm going to do it today. I'm going to do it today. And then I wouldn't do it. And so then I'm like, okay, I got to do it today. I got to do it today. And then it was just days of this. And so I finally was like, hey, I need to talk. And I just told him, I was like, I just cannot be a part of New Testament Christian Church anymore. I cannot be a part of it anymore. And I told him, I said, he's like, okay. And, I'm sure that wasn't good news to hear on his part.
Right.
Because he's still in, and I'm telling him I'm done. And he didn't. I knew that he was not going to be open to me telling him why I was leaving. I could not, so I never had expressed to him why I was leaving, because, when somebody so like if somebody who's in, because I was the same way.
Yes.
Somebody who's in and they see a friend or somebody who is leaving, you don't listen to what their reasoning. You make up excuses and you defend the organization.
Yes.
And I know that because I was there and I knew that's what was going to happen. So that's why I didn't even discuss with him why I was leaving.
And he didn't ask?
He never asked.
Right.
He never asked. I never told him because I understood where his mindset was.
Yes.
And I understood where it would go. So I didn't even bother to go there because I didn't want to fight about it. I didn't want there to be an argument about it. So I told him then, I don't want anybody calling me. I don't want anybody contacting me, and I don't want anybody harassing me.
Yeah.
I will not put up with it. Because over the years, I had seen that happen to people. And so I had told him, and I told him many times, even when people would come into town, I told him, I would just say, I do not want to talk to them. I do not want to speak with them. And, he would come home from conferences. So-and-so says hi, so-and-so, and I was like, okay, that's good. But I never relayed any messages to anybody because, when you leave, you are now an enemy of the organization.
Yes.
And I didn't want the drama. I didn't want the problems. So I cut off all connection to everybody that was still in. To the local church members, because I had quit going to the church there in that town, I cut off all connection, all conversations. I even blocked them from on my Facebook page, on my phone. From the church members there, I did all that because I didn't want the drama. I didn't, what they're going to say this about you, they're going to say that about you, and on and on and on. So because I was very headstrong about that to him, he's like, well, I'm going to have to tell Reverend Olson. I was like, I understand that. I understand that completely. I understand where you're coming from, and I know you're going to have to tell him. I have no problems with that. But I do not want them contacting me.
Right.
I do not want people harassing me. And he told Reverend Olson that. That's what he told me, that he told Reverend Olson. That I didn't want people contacting me. So.
Because then it's too little too late anyway.
It really is. It really is. After this point, you've seen so much and you've experienced so much. By this point, it was almost 31 years.
Yes. You know the makeup of the organization.
Right. You know the makeup. You know how people are going to respond. You already know how they're going to defend. Because you've already been there yourself. So it's like, why bother? You already know what's going to happen, what's going to be said, and things like that. So it's, you just cut it off. And so I didn't get that, um, where a lot of people, and if they came into town, I was like, I'm not going to fellowship with them. I'm not, because I didn't want people to try to talk me into going back.
Right.
Because I, there's one thing about me. I'm going to think I thought for 5 years long and hard before I actually did it.
Right.
And when I make a decision like that, it wasn't something that I made lightly.
Right.
It's not a light decision that I made. And I knew that that's what needed to be done.
And we all know when we leave what is going to happen. I think I read a quote from someone recently. He's one of the guys that's trying to expose Scientology. He was high up in there. And he said, you can, I'm paraphrasing, but
Right.
basically the difference between religion and a cult. Now, by religion, I think the context of what he was saying was just your run-of-the-mill, Baptist
Right.
church out there. You can come and go, and no one's gonna, they'll be happy to see you. They'll welcome you. You're not an enemy.
Right.
He said, you judge it by what happens when you leave. That's
Right.
the difference.
Right.
And that's where the cult nature really rears its head, because they're shunning, and they use the Bible to say, if you left us, you've left God. Like, we are one in the spirit. We are one together.
Right.
And it's, you inherently knew that, so it's like, why bother?
Right.
Most of us are that way. Like, why would you even bother? If you give someone a letter or a notice or call them, count that as, like, I don't even know what's the point, because they're absolutely going to twist it and lie. They're going to lie. If you leave this group, they will lie like a rug.
Right. And it's just like, so even coming out and telling my story, it's like, I know what to expect.
Yes.
I know what to expect, because they've done it the same thing year after year after year after year.
Yes.
So I expect them to talk trash about me. I expect them, they may even write a letter and send it to everybody about that. What is that they would do to preachers and
like
wives
disfellowship?
Yes, a disfellowship. They have been disfellowshipped. Go right ahead. I've already disfellowshipped myself anyway.
Right. I've disfellowshipped myself from you long before you sent out your letter.
Right, exactly. So it's like, a disfellowship letter, and this, that, and the other, and getting up over the pulpit, even taking what I say and twisting things around, and lying about me and things that really happened or whatever.
Yes.
And so I already know to expect that. I already know that, because I've seen it for over 30 years.
But you also know that every time we tell a story, and we endeavor with the best of our ability to tell just the truth, facts, that it is going to resonate, and we are seeing that. We're seeing a lot of people sharing that it's resonating because they've seen it or experienced it themselves.
Correct. Exactly.
Your situation isn't unique. It's unique between you and him and those little nuances, but overall, that's not a unique situation in this group.
It's correct. You see it over, and that's the thing too, is okay, because of the overall mindset of the leadership, it seems, and I've had people tell me this, and I've had other people that have recently reached out to me because they've listened to my story, and they've said, I went through the same thing with my spouse.
Yes.
And it seems like because of the overall view of the leadership and how they view marriage within their organization, and how women and children are treated within this organization, and the mindset of the men, overall the mindset of the men, how they treat their spouses and their women and their children, that it's I'm not the only one that has experienced it.
No, and you know what? The leadership knows it. They're fully
Yes.
aware, and they still allow these men to be in the pulpit. Just like
Yes.
your ex-husband is still in the pulpit,
Yes.
and
He can curse me out. And so, one of the things that happened to me while I was still in the organization before I had left, within that 5 years that I knew I needed to leave, but just didn't, I was so afraid. There was so much fear that kept me in. I had a nervous breakdown. And because of the stress being so extreme of everything, my adrenals, I had my adrenals crashed. They shut down.
so what happens when that occurs? Like, how do you
Because,
feel?
right, so my cortisol levels were so high because of the stress that it overloaded my adrenals. And that, when your cortisol levels are so high, it affects your adrenals, it affects all of your hormones in your body, your progesterone, estrogen, everything. And I crashed. My body crashed. And I went into the deepest, darkest hole, is how I describe it, that I had ever been in my life.
Is this something, because I don't know this part of your story at all. Is this something that comes, I imagine it comes on at a certain pace. Was there a day where it just hit hard? And if that's the case, what were your symptoms, and what did you do?
So it was over an extended period of time. And I think it went on for months. Um, I so what happens is you just go into this deepest depression. And because you're not allowed to seek counsel outside of the church organization, you're not allowed to, that's considered a sin. So because you're not allowed to go outside the church for counsel or for therapy, or to talk about this stuff. See, Christians in this organization, Christians are not supposed to be depressed. What's wrong with you? Don't you pray in the Holy Ghost? Aren't you baptized in the Holy Spirit? And so you're criticized if you're depressed, if you have some emotional turmoil going on, if there's something that isn't what they would term Christ-like, or what Christians are supposed to be. Christians are never supposed to be depressed. Christians are never supposed to have um, things like this happening.
And yet,
So,
clearly, I just want to say here, because I have seen so many videos and pictures of other churches all across the organization. When I first started to do this back in May, and I was looking them over, I was shocked at how huge people are, which is, to me, not necessarily, I mean, you could use the same reasoning that they do and say, is the Holy Ghost a glutton? Is he
right.
got a knack for cupcakes? I don't look at those people as if it's that. I believe
Right.
it's stress related. It's never being
Yes.
able to rest and put yourself in a place where you can take care of yourself.
Right. So because of this happening to me, I've learned a lot about what happens to your body when you're under so much stress that your cortisol levels are so high for an extended period of time.
Mm.
Weight gain. Weight gain is one. Well, ta-da, look at me. Weight gain. Um, it's not because you're overeating. I have been on absolutely every stinking diet out there that you can think of. None of them have worked.
Right.
Because it's all centered to this high cortisol level. So anyhow, I ended up getting into this place where I couldn't, the brain fog is so extreme, and you have absolutely no energy, and sometimes just to get up out of bed just to take a shower is hard to do, physically hard to do. and I couldn't talk to anybody. When I would try to talk with my spouse then, or the people there that were pastoring at the time, um, they looked at me like I was an alien, like I had three green heads, is what they would term. So you're isolated and you feel very all alone. There's nobody you can open up to because they don't understand why you feel like this.
Did they pray
And it
for
was
you?
no.
Mm.
They just look at you weird, like you need to get saved.
So that's
There's
another thread through the organization, is there is no, and we've seen it. I mean, I saw Keckle talking about it recently in a video, how everyone else was sick, but he came, but he didn't offer up any kind of prayer or concern. And
no.
I think that is something that runs through. Even I think I told you recently, just as a side note, and you can go on, is there was a time at the Bible school, I think it was around 2000, 2001, a bunch of us ladies, it's like there was something in the water. We all had hysterectomies for different reasons. I had an infection within the lining of my uterus, which it really took a lot of doctors to find that out. But we were all having our uteruses and ovaries yanked out. I mean, there had to be a pile sky high somewhere from all the ladies in NTCC. And Davis had no mercy. It was, you needed to hurry up and be back in church and be back teaching children's church. And so, I see that now just in what you're saying as well. It is a part of the organization. It's not acceptable.
Right, exactly. So, and of course, there's nobody licensed or capable, educated, to counsel somebody who's going through these things because, well, you're not supposed to be going through these things because you're a Christian.
Right.
And so you're shamed. And so that just makes it worse. It got to the point where I felt like I was in the deepest pit and it was very dark. I didn't know I didn't want to go to the hospitals. I knew that they would put me on a lot of medications, and I didn't want to do that.
Right.
Because I'd already been educating myself on proper foods and more, um, these medications that they put people on and what they're just poison. And I had already been taking supplements and trying to heal myself in different ways on a very holistic way. So I knew I didn't want to do that. But I remember walking through the stores and very, very close to buying myself some alcohol just to self-medicate myself because the feeling was so oppressive. And I thought, oh God, I understand now why people self-medicate as a sinner.
Yeah.
I understand that being so low and feeling that feeling, I was like, God, I understand why people self-medicate. I can totally get it now. When they're so depressed and they don't have anybody to go to because you feel so isolated, because the majority of people don't understand when you start telling them how you feel and what's going on in your head and your body, how your body feels. They don't understand it.
Right.
And so you don't talk about it because most people don't understand. Well, I remember going to I saw a chiropractor regularly, and they were checking my blood pressure was off, and just a lot of things were really off. And my chiropractor started talking to me about stuff, and I would cry. I was constantly crying all the time, and I just broke down. And she's like, what's wrong? And I started telling her how I was feeling, and I don't understand why, and I don't know where this is coming from, and I don't have. And she started crying because she was actually going through the same thing. And so it was a relief to both of us, I think, and an answered prayer for myself that here this woman was going through the same thing because of the stress levels in her life. and we sat there and cried together in her office. But I'm so thankful for her because, you know, she does a lot of holistic things and nutrition and supplements and things like that. She was able to steer me to some supplements that really have helped and to help my body. It wasn't so much my mental, but finding out and realizing that it's the cortisol and what it was doing to my hormones and things like that. And so then I went to a holistic doctor within the town that I was in, and they did a lot of blood work and hormonal work, testing and things like that, and to find out, yeah, my cortisol levels are high. Yes, so that's causing my progesterone to be off, which is causing me to be estrogen dominant, even though that's where it's supposed to be. And this is what happens to your body when these things are going on. And, you know, you're low in certain minerals and to take these supplements and things like that. So that is how I got out of it. I chose to do more of a holistic. I went to an herbalist in town and things like that as well. So I chose to do it holistically with supplements and things like that to get out of there, out of that spot, to get out of that dark pit.
And you did that all alone, basically?
I paid for all of it.
No, that, but also alone, like alone, just you. You didn't have support of a husband or a church or a pastor or anything like that.
No. Spiritually, I didn't have any help at all with it.
Right.
It was my chiropractor and then going to these holistic doctors and herbalists. That's how I got out of it. Um, which and I bring this up because since I have been doing this, I've had somebody reach out to me about a family member that's still in, and was telling me stories of this family member and some of the things that they have gone through and have went through, and I'm like, oh, I'm not the only one
No.
that has had a nervous breakdown in that organization. I don't believe I'm the only one.
No, I don't either.
I believe there's others, and there's other women, and possibly even men.
You can only push it all down, too, for so long and bear it all. It has to, it just gets compressed. Something has to give.
Right, and your body's going to be the one that gives.
Yes, absolutely. It's gonna force you to shut down to face things, probably.
Right. Exactly. Your body's going to force. Your body's just going to shut down, and that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. So.
And how long ago was that?
Oh, I would say 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay.
I would say 7, maybe 7.5 years ago. So it was while I was still in. Yeah. But,
and how did your ex-husband treat you during that time? Was he understanding at all on any days of the week?
Yes and no. Yes, he really didn't take time to fully understand what was going on in my body or what was going on. You know, I could talk to him about it a little bit, but as far as where my head was because of the imbalance in hormones and things like that and what it does to cause depression and things like that, I could not speak to him about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no. You know, I couldn't go there with that because.
So he never said anything like, "You want me to come with you?" When you came home, was there any sort of take you by the hand? Hey, what's that?
He didn't even pay for the doctor visits. I didn't have insurance, so he didn't even pay for the doctor visits. I had to pay for all that out of my little jam business. I think at that time I had my flower business going. So he didn't even pay for it. He never paid for any of the tests. He never paid for the doctor visits.
So why would he
It
be
was hundreds.
interested in the results?
Yeah, it was hundreds of dollars
Oh, I'm sure.
because the supplements and stuff. I had to buy my own supplements. He wouldn't buy. He always complained about how expensive everything was, even though I would go out of my way to try and order them and get them online for cheaper. Everything was always so too expensive. Excuse me. Everything. It was like I was an inconvenience to him. Excuse me. At times, I've really felt like you're an expendable spouse.
Yep. There's others waiting in the wing.
Yeah. And yeah, another subject that I really want to bring up, because I faced it with my first spouse, I also faced it with my second spouse. And this is a hard subject to talk about along with other things because it's hushed. It's kept quiet within the organization. And that is men and their porn. And
so you had the situation with both husbands?
yeah, so I had already talked about the first spouse, and so
yes.
At this time, so I had my flower business, and I was working a part-time job as well. And so I was working my part-time job, and I had suspected for years that this was going on. You suspect certain things, and then you tell yourself, no, Monica, he's a minister, he's a Christian, you trust him, blah, blah, blah. It's just a lie of the devil.
What were some things that made you think that? Was it just intuition? Like if someone else is out there and they're like, I'm wondering the same thing.
I don't want to get too
okay. Yeah.
Too personal,
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
I don't want to get too
So things presented themselves that made you be suspicious that possibly it was happening.
Correct.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Yes.
We'll go with that.
Yeah. So I knew he had the day off on this specific day, and I knew he loves his naps, and he would take a nap, and so.
Who doesn't love a nap, man?
Right, exactly. So I had an accident on my way to work, and so not like a driving accident or whatever, but I worked as a CNA at the time, and I did in-home care, so I had to come home. So I was like, well, I'm not going to call him and let him know I'm on my way home because I know he's probably taking a nap, and I don't want to disturb him while he's taking a nap. So I came home and got out of the car, and where our bedroom was positioned, it was right above the driveway. And so I come home, I lock my car door so the horn goes off. The door that I entered into was right below the bedroom. So, and I, close the door, lock the door, go in. I started a load of laundry, came upstairs, got in the shower, and proceeded to walk through the house into the bedroom. So it wasn't like I was sneaking around here.
Right.
And he's in the bedroom watching porn, and I caught him. I'll just say I caught him watching porn and other things, okay? And so I was like, oh my gosh. I said, I had a lot of questions for him. One of my questions was, how long have you been doing this? He would not answer my question. So that makes me believe that he had been doing it for quite a while.
What was the reaction when you caught him? Was it one of, any kind of humility, or what was the?
Well, it's like catching a kid in a candy jar with their hand in the candy jar kind of thing, and they get
Yeah.
that certain look on their face.
Yeah.
Busted by mom kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, um, he assured me that he had everything under control, that he doesn't do it on a everyday basis, and that he had things under control. And I kind of looked at him and said, yeah, it looks like you got it under control there. Yeah. And, that's when I started asking him questions about how long he'd been doing this and things like that. And it took him a week to apologize, which I was surprised that I even got that.
Did it feel genuine?
Yes, it did. But and I told him, I said, I've seen this before, and it always ends up into a divorce, even though I forgive you or whatever, it ends up in a divorce, and you go off with another woman. I've seen it. That's my experience with this is. It's just another step closer, and to that end result. He apologized because he didn't think it was that big of a deal. He really didn't think it was that big of a deal for him to do that as a licensed ordained minister. But that, and I had to sit and explain to him what that means to your marriage, what that does to your marriage.
Can I ask you this? I heard Keckle recently in a message talking about the roles of men and women in a marriage, and he brought up, he just threw it in there, but we've heard different things from Davis and Keckle through the years, and he said the wedding bed is undefiled, that's what the Bible says. Do you feel like there's any part of that where, do you feel like this is a situation, because I imagine it's different for everyone. There's men and women who watch it together. So the wedding bed there, I guess, is undefiled because they're both, yes. But in your situation, is it something where, did you feel like, well, I'm not providing or I'm lacking, so he has to make up for how his body is? Because, men's bodies are different than women's bodies, and that's just a fact.
Right. So we talked about that.
Okay.
Thing.
Right.
And he started bringing up, well, you don't always want it or whatever, blah blah blah. So I figured this didn't hurt, and I just looked at him and I said, "Don't you even dare turn this around and make it be my fault that you can't control your actions. Don't even go there with me. I'm not going to allow that.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for what you're doing. And if you wanted more, you could have asked for more.
But also, here's a way to get more. Be nice.
Treat your wife.
Don't call your wife a lazy biatch. Don't do that.
Right. Or like this had happened also. This had happened a month or two before I was like done with the marriage. It happened a couple months before. I had a migraine, kind of one of those functional migraines for 3 days, and I had worked my business. I had worked a part-time job, and I was going to school. And I had come home from class that Wednesday night. I knew my kitchen was a total disaster because he would make himself food and not clean up after himself. So the dishes were piled in the kitchen sink, and
who doesn't want to have sex with that dude?
And so, well, if you're just rude and crude and disrespectful to your spouse, they don't want to have sex with you.
No.
Okay? I'm just saying. And So I had come home, and I knew, I already knew that it was a mess, and I had been looking at it for days, and he wouldn't pick up after himself or anything like that. I wasn't expecting a lot, and I had told him that repeatedly. Just please, just clean up, your after yourself. Don't expect me to clean it up.
Right.
So we're like days into this and mess, and so he'd just make another mess on top of the mess, another mess on top of the other mess, and so I knew, I was like, okay, I got home, I put my bags down, and he was sitting on the couch. It was his day off from church. They didn't have church or anything that night, and he was on his phone watching YouTube or whatever, which I assumed would be the case, and it was. I just looked at him and said hi, and turned around and went into the kitchen and started cleaning my kitchen. And so I'm standing there at the sink, and I'm cleaning, and he comes stomping in the kitchen, and I'm like, oh. And he's standing in front of the stove, and he's just staring at me. And I just not even looking at him. I just was looking out the window or just cleaning. And I was like, I just need, I've had a migraine for the last 3 days, and all working and doing everything I'm doing. I just wish you could have just cleaned up after yourself. I'm not expecting a major, I'm just expecting the bare minimum. I'm not expecting all of this, whatever. And he proceeded to just go off on me. You're nothing but a fat blank, an effing fat, a cunt, just crude and rude, and yelling at me over and over again, repeatedly over and over again. You're nothing but a effing fat, nothing but an effing fat ass bitch, or nothing but an effing fat ass cunt. Okay? It's crude and rude, but that's what it was.
What would Jesus do, right? That's what he was doing.
And he was just yelling this over and over and over and over again while I'm cleaning my kitchen. And I looked at him and I said, I am not bringing this up for an argument. I don't want an argument. I don't want to fight. I don't want to do this. But he proceeded to just screaming and yelling at me about all this, and I just looked at him. By this point, I had already educated myself on his type of attitude and personalities of what was going on in the house, and I just held my hand out toward him, the palm of my hand, and I said, I do not receive these words. I send them back to the sender tenfold. I will not receive what has been spoken over me. And I said, and he finally stopped, and I looked at him, and I said, God just heard absolutely everything you said. And he's like, yeah, I know. And then turns around and walks out. His whole spirit about him was he had every right to treat me like that because I'm living in sin, because I'm no longer in the organization, and he's holier than I am because he is in the organization and I'm not.
Right.
So then we start dealing with this spirit of, because I'm the one living in sin because I'm no longer going to his church, to the organization, now I'm the one living in sin. And he has every right to behave that way toward me because of that reason. So then I'm dealing with this spirit, and I remember.
So he doesn't have to uphold his own reputation and morals and all of that. He's telling you he's fully allowed to rescind all that to deal with you on your sinner level.
Right.
Oh my God.
Because he, and so now I'm dealing with this spirit. It's a spirit behind it all. A holier than thou spirit, because now you're no longer serving God because you quit going, you're no longer in the church. So now I'm dealing with this spirit on myself. he's not just doing it to strangers, now he's doing it to his wife.
Right.
And so there's a lot of this going on that I'm having to deal with. And it got to the point where I would just, I do not receive these words that are being spoken over me. And that's all I would say. I wouldn't respond to him and things like that. Finally, so a couple of weeks later, we're at the grocery store. We're grocery shopping for the house together or whatever. Like we had always done for years. That was our date night, was going grocery shopping together or whatever.
Woo.
And so he came to me and he's like, hey, you haven't kissed me in a long time. You know, it's been a while since I've gotten a kiss. And I just looked at him and I said, why would I want to kiss the lips that curse me?
Right.
And he's like, what? He was blown away. And I said, why in the world would I want to kiss the lips that curse me? And see, here's the thing, too, is he would do those things to me, and then the next day he would send me a text, I love you.
Oof.
So it's this constant, you know, one day he's treating me like a piece of trash, less than actually, and then the next day it's, oh, I love you, and it's everything's supposed to be wiped away, everything's supposed to be A-okay now. So that was an ongoing thing for years. He could treat me badly, and then he wouldn't apologize. He would just say, I love you.
Right.
And that would make everything okay.
Wow.
So the reason why I wanted to bring up the porn issue is because I'm like, this cannot be just two men out of this organization that's involved in this.
Like you hit the jackpot.
Yeah, like I'm the only one. Yeah, ding, ding, ding. Well, since I've been publicating this stuff, I've had women come to me in private messages, more than one, twice, two, if not more, come and tell me, message me, DM me personally, and telling me their experiences with their spouse in porn.
Wow.
Or this other family member that's still in the organization and their porn. So this is an issue that needs to be brought out because there's an underlying sexual immorality going on and they're covering it up.
Yeah, because there is a lot of information out there concerning the effects of that.
There's a lot of scientific information concerning the effects of the person, the individual doing it, as well as what it does to a marriage.
Yes. Right. Right. Oh.
Yeah. So, so there's all that. So I finally just said I cannot do this anymore, especially after he had cursed me out all that way and all this stuff. Well,
so is this like just last year then?
Yeah, this was last year.
Okay.
So, and even the year before that. And so there's been things where, you know, there's been a church member, a woman, a single woman that lived 4 doors down from us. That this woman would go to his church, went to his church, a new church member. She just happens to live 4 doors down. And now she starts asking him to come over because she's got something that needs to be fixed in the house. And so,
is that a euphemism or is that for real?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Oh my goodness. So you're still married at this point?
Yeah, so he had been doing this with the church member that lived 4 doors down before I even thought about filing for divorce.
So he would go over there by himself, with her by herself, or did she live with other people?
As far as I understand, she lived by herself.
Mm.
And she rented from her son-in-law.
Mm.
So she could have asked her son-in-law to fix his own house.
Right.
I don't know. You know? And I trusted him. This is the thing. I totally, completely trusted him. And, I kind of questioned it in my mind, and no, Monica, he's loyal. He would never do that to you, and things like that. So he had done this a few times, and then one time he really enjoys having people over, and he had invited his whole church over to the house for a barbecue one Saturday night. And I said I really didn't care that he had done that. I said I'm not cooking for these people, but I'll make sure my house is clean. And so that Saturday morning, I got up and, you just throw your hair up in a bun and throw some junky whatever clothes on because you're going to spend the day cleaning your house. So he was busy cooking for the day, and I was busy cleaning for the day. And it was about 45 minutes before everybody was supposed to show up, and I had just finished. I just sat down on the couch to take a break before I got in the shower. And figured I got 45 minutes. I got plenty of time.
Right.
Well, then there's a knock at the door, and I go and answer that. I was like, oh my man, I hope they're not showing up already. So I go and answer the door, and it's this woman. I've never met her before. I don't know who she is. And she's like, I was like, hello? And she's like, oh, I'm here to help Reverend Pugh. Where's Reverend Pugh? She doesn't have any of her food with her. She doesn't have nothing with her because they were doing a potluck kind of deal. And she just walks in my house. And I was like, well, he said you guys weren't supposed to show up for another 45 minutes, at a certain time. And, oh, no, I'm here to help Reverend Pugh. And she just walks in my house, and she's standing in my living room. It's like she knew the layout of my home.
Creepy.
And I started getting this, I had never felt this feeling before. And I'm like, what is happening? What is going on? Who is this woman? I don't know who she is. And she seemingly knows the layout of my home. And I told her, I was like, oh, well, he's out back getting things ready and stuff. And she's like, oh, okay. She lets herself out my back door. And I'm left standing there going, what? It just happened. And who is this woman? And how come she knows my home? And she's just here for Reverend Pugh, to help Reverend Pugh. She doesn't even have her food or anything with her. She's just there. I'm like, it just left this weirdest feeling, and I couldn't explain it.
You said she was a new church member?
She was a newer church member.
Was she dressed like holiness when she came to the door?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, she was. And so, I believe she was.
Because there was going to be church members there. That's who the barbecue was for.
Correct. It was the pastor, everybody, all the church members that could show up were going to be there.
Right.
And so, I was so like, what is going on? And this feeling, this overwhelming, strange feeling that I had, and I had never felt that before. And so I was questioning myself, like, what is going on? And what just happened? And why do I feel this way? And why do I have this weird gut feeling? And I started, so when he would come in the house, I was like, who is that woman? Oh, that's the church member I've told you about. She lives 4 doors down. And I was like, well, why is she coming over here? People just don't show up 45 minutes early.
No, it's rude.
Unless they're like a close friend of yours.
Right.
And like, hey, could you come over and help, or they volunteer, to come over and help and everything. And I was like, who is she? Why is she here? As I kept questioning about it, like, why was she here? And how come she knew the layout of the house? Has she been here before? And I kept constantly questioning him. Well, he ended up getting mad at me and just twisting it around. And she's nothing but a sweetheart, and she lives 4 doors down, and she's our newest church member, and our church member, and she's nothing but a sweetheart. And if you got a problem with her coming over here to help me, you got an issue, and things like that. And so, sorry about that. I don't know who that is. But,
oh, that's okay. That's just real life.
Yeah, and so, I just eventually got
now
over
then,
it.
what month was this last year?
I I would say it was the year before, the
Oh,
summer
okay.
before. It
Okay.
was during the summer, or even maybe it was last year in the summertime, because I had told him in June. Maybe my timeline's kind of skewed, and I apologize if I don't have everything on the right timeline. Um, so this happened before, so it must have been the summer before, because this happened before I had told him I'm done.
Okay.
And so it wasn't this last summer that it happened, it was the summer before.
So it wasn't like you had told him and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna start swinging out."
No, so this was before I even considered a divorce. This was before I filed. This was before I even told him I'm done.
Okay.
This was
Interesting.
before. So all this was going on before. So we're still married, trying to keep this thing together kind of thing. And so, and then after that is when the cursing started going on, when he started cursing me out like that and doing those sorts of things. So it's almost like things got progressively worse with him standing there in the kitchen cursing me out, telling me I'm all these things. And I mean, it was just odd because I wasn't nagging him about stuff. I guess maybe he thought I was nagging him by asking him to clean up after himself. I don't know.
Clearly.
But so it just seemed like things got worse, and to the point where I was like, I'm done. I just woke up Sunday morning and I was sitting on the patio just thinking about my life, thinking about our relationship and how he was treating me, how I had been treated over the years, and realizing that it's not going to get better. It's just getting worse. And where I wanted to be in life and everything. And I was thinking about my home. We had this beautiful home and these beautiful gardens that I had put together for 13 years, worked on these gardens, and my business was thriving. I had a very successful flower business and it was thriving, and I was like, I'm going to lose it all if I'm going to lose my marriage, I'm going to lose my home, I'm going to lose absolutely everything. And I knew it. I knew then. But I was like, I was looking at my life and the way I was living emotionally and spiritually with this individual, psychologically, and I was just done. I wasn't angry. I wasn't mad. I just was done. And he had come home from his church service that morning. I was down in the basement doing laundry, and he had come through, and I just said, hey, um, the marriage is over with. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And it was literally in that same tone of voice. I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. And he didn't say a word. He just got this scowl on his face and turned around and walked away. Never once said he wanted to work on the marriage. Never once said he didn't want a divorce. Never once told me any of that. He was like, okay. And so that was on like the first Sunday in June of last year. And I put the divorce together, all the papers. I was downloading the divorce papers and stuff. And really, I hadn't filed yet. That was June. I didn't file until August 8th. So June, July, August, it was a couple months before I actually filed for the divorce. And what filed for the divorce it was another him cursing me out again in a very much like what I already described. And I just put my hand out toward him with my palm toward him, not touching him, and just said, I do not receive these words. I send them back to the sender tenfold. Then he started pushing me around the kitchen. He started getting physical. So that evening I stayed up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning filling out the divorce papers.
What caused
And
him to stop pushing you around? He just did it for a certain length of time and left you?
I got extremely mad and I just walked out of the kitchen.
Okay.
We were in the kitchen when he was doing that. I didn't say anything to him. I just walked out. And I was very shaken up by that. I was literally shaking. My hands were shaking and physically shaking. Um, I was very disturbing, and I was emotionally, physically shaken.
Did you feel
Um,
safe there?
that's a good question. I don't remember feeling unsafe. I remember at this point in time, I think I was cleaning my house. It must have been I was cleaning my home, and when this happened, and I remember going into the living room and dusting or doing some cleaning in the living room, and just trying to get my thoughts together, trying to um, um, grasp what just happened and to, you know, mentally think about what just happened. And I remember he walked through the hallway into the living room, and I looked at him and I said, "You will, if you ever lay a hand on me again, I will make sure that you go to jail so fast. You'll have to explain to everybody at your church why you ended up in jail." I said, "We can do this divorce in a civil way, or we can fight it. You can fight it, you can do whatever you want, and it can get nasty. It's your decision." And I was like, "But you will never lay another finger on me again." And so that night I decided, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to try and work itself out. He made absolutely no attempt to try to make the marriage work. He never ever expressed that he wanted it to work. And again,
So he never said to you, "Hey, Monica, let's talk to our pastor. Let's tell him what's going on. Let's talk to Reverend Olson. Let's tell him what's going on and see if they can't pray for us or help us in some way."
well, no, because, and this is another thing with the porn, when I caught him, I told him, "I'm not going to tell the people at your church. One, because I've been out. I'm no longer there. So one, are they even going to believe me?
Right.
One, are they ever even going to believe me?
They might as well be talking to the devil.
Right. And they're not going to believe me, one. And number two, I know exactly what they did with my first spouse.
Yeah.
And with our counseling session, it was a joke. It was a waste of time.
Yeah.
So why bother?
Exactly.
I wasn't going to do that again because it was a joke. And so,
But he never himself thought of that. Like, aside from you, his experience, he doesn't even say, "Let's consult our pastor. Let's get some help." Yeah. So, because no one thinks to really.
No, because see, if there was ever a problem, it was always my fault. That's the thing.
So he didn't feel.
Any issues that we had was always my fault.
But even then, you think he would say, "I need to get you straightened out. Let's talk to pastor," you know? Like, it's just interesting to me that not many people resort to that. And if God talks to those men so much, they're in the throne room, first up before the throne room of God, he doesn't tell them, "There's things going on in the land. You better, how about you try to help these people?"
Right. Yeah,
It's not a thing. It's not a part of who they are. It's not natural.
Right. And well, the thing of it is you feel like your hands are tied because no matter what you do,
yes,
there's never going to be any resolution. There's never going to be anything fixed, or for a lack of better word, there's never going to be any counsel that's worth anything.
No.
You know, because the porn thing, I remember telling him, I'm not going to tell the organization. One, because I don't think, because I've left, I don't know if they'll even believe me.
Yeah.
Are they just going to think it's some accusation that I'm accusing you of? And I told him, I said, and another thing is if they do believe me, I saw what they did. You know, we lost our house.
Yeah.
With my first spouse. We lost our house. It went into foreclosure, you know, and I'm remembering all of this. And I told him, I said, I know what they did to us when I did tell them.
Yes.
And here we are. We have this beautiful home. I have, you know, we have all this stuff. And so in my mind, I was like, if I do tell these people about that situation that was going on, we're just going to lose everything.
Yes. Yes.
And so, you know, I'm trying to keep this marriage together. It's hard enough, and then make it, you know, and I knew that this was going to be an issue when I left the organization, this marriage. Well, my spouse's mindset is, you know, don't you remember the conversation we had? If you left the organization, our marriage was over. So that's his mindset too.
It's over and he can treat you however he wants.
Well, right, because he's in the right church. I'm not. You know, I went and I found myself a spirit-filled church and that cares, loves their people. I got into ministry. I got into youth ministry. I mentored boys for a short time until, you know, I could only take them so far because I'm a woman and they're a bunch of boys. And then I got into prison ministry, and I'm telling you, God moved in these services. There were so many services where I saw God moving with these children, these high school kids, and in these services that it put to shame the majority of the services I've ever been in New Testament Christian church.
It's all the same.
And these kids up there preaching and ministering to their peers. I've seen high school kids that were suicidal and attempting suicide, and to giving their life to Christ, praying with them for the Holy Spirit, to be baptized in the Holy Spirit, and then living a Christian life full of love and mercy and grace, and seeing them reach out to their other peers at high school. I've seen these kids' lives changed. It's not just New Testament Christian Church doesn't even have anything like that.
No.
So anyhow, that night I stayed up till 1-2 o'clock in the morning. He was served August 8th. As his little copies were on his little spot where he had breakfast every morning, and he was served papers that morning. He knew they were coming. I was the one that drew them all up. He told me what he was willing to do and what he wasn't willing to do.
Right.
It was an uncontested divorce. You know, he said he would give me X amount of money and blah blah blah, and we sold the house, and yeah. So fast forward to just a few months ago, actually, within this year, I find out 4 months after I had left the church, 4 months after I had moved from that town, from that state to another state where I'm located right now, 4 months after I left that town, that state, he's married.
And who is he married to?
He's married to the little sweetheart church member that lived 4 doors down.
Well, isn't that something?
What a coinky dinky.
Yeah. And he's still preaching.
Yeah.
I know he is, because once I learned that because I was looking through that church's Facebook page just because I saw that the Keckles were going to be going there, and I thought, oh, who's there? What's going on? And I saw him and her. And I was like, wait a minute. I was looking at my watch, like, I remember Moníca posting on somewhere that she was divorced, and it wasn't that long ago.
Right, it wasn't.
So I thought that was interesting. Then I looked to see if he had preached any services, and he had. And it's interesting what he preached too. Uh,
I
like,
wouldn't know.
it's
I
one of
wouldn't
those
know.
things, it should be back on them, but it never is.
Right. Yeah, so then further investigating about, well, I didn't have to investigate. People started calling me and telling me stuff. Um, People started contacting me about her. Let's see. So anyhow, I had found out that church members there were being affected. And so then when I put two and two together, and you look back and you're like, oh my God, he was going to her house by himself.
Mm.
Oh, and then that time that she came over and you had that really weird feeling in your gut. Oh.
That's why.
And now they're married? I guess it wasn't a coincidence after all, was it?
No.
And so then you're like, oh, no wonder I felt that way. Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I see it? And so, but then people start contacting me out of the blue about how apparently after our divorce was final on the 18th of October of last year, and how he made this
today's it's right now 10:18. It's after midnight here anyway on the East Coast.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not yet.
18 of 22 is when the divorce was final.
Wow.
So apparently he went to service. When he found out that it was final, he went to the next service. He announced to the church that his wife no longer wanted to be married to him and that I divorced him. And then shortly after, he starts dating, guess who?
Wow.
And she's not even been in the church for a year.
And nobody asked any questions anywhere? Or did they?
I have no idea. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
So then this individual, this church member, my second spouse and I actually pastored her in the first work we were in this state. And she had been a church member there off and on for all these years. Well, I had already blocked her on my Facebook page and stuff because when I had left, I blocked her and cut off communications with her. Well, I didn't block her on my business page. So she starts messaging me on my Facebook page. And she starts telling me how they told her to get out of the church.
What?
And she's starting telling me why that she's no longer allowed to go to that church and all this stuff. Well, she was questioning what was going on with my second spouse in the church. And she's like, I'm reading my Bible and I see that the Bible says this, that, and the other about marriage, and I know you. She's like, I know you, and she's like, nothing made sense. So she started questioning why he was marrying this person, why they were getting married, and the Bible says certain things. Well, they didn't like that, and they got mad. Considered her that she was pestering them. And
specifically your ex-husband and the new wife, they thought she was pestering them, or the church as a whole?
Pestering my second spouse, my ex-second spouse, and the pastor of that church.
Oh.
So, because she was going to both of those men, the pastor and my ex, and asking them questions about what my ex is doing.
Wow.
And they apparently didn't approve of that, and they cut off communications with her. They blocked her on phones, and they blocked her on Facebook, and basically kicked her out.
And she was a faithful church member, you would say?
Well, here's the thing. She probably doesn't pay her. She probably didn't pay her tithe all the time. She's one of the ones that probably still wore her pants here and there. She wasn't completely and totally in, so it's not a total loss, right? You
Right.
know the mentality, because I'm guilty of it, being in the organization and other church and being a pastor's wife. Well, they weren't totally in anyway, so God really didn't have them anyway, right?
Good grief.
So it's that mentality. Here, I've been trying to help her, because I know her. I've been there trying to pastor her in previous years and things like that,
Yeah.
and just trying to love on her and show her God love,
Yes.
and praying with her and things like that, and doing what God would want to do.
You would think.
Yeah, you would think. So apparently they've started dating shortly after the divorce was final, and married 4 months after I left the state.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Will she have to go to Bible school?
well, isn't that a good subject? So in the meantime, finding out all this, let me back up a little bit. In the meantime, finding out about all of this with the church member and what's going on, and everything that's happened, I'm like, I am writing a letter. I was going to be quiet and not say anything. I'm just going to quietly leave. But then it starts affecting other people. It starts affecting church members. It starts affecting the children of God. And it starts affecting these people and how they look at God, how they view God.
Yeah,
because
innocence.
Of what they see these men of God, quote unquote,
yeah.
do, and how they're treating her. So then I'm like, you know what? Where's the integrity of the pulpit here?
There is none.
Where's the integrity here? So I wrote a letter. I sent one copy to Reverend Olson, I sent one copy to Reverend Keckel, and I sent one copy to the pastor of the church there in that town.
You did this one?
March, April, I would say probably within May of this year.
Wow.
May time frame of this year. Because I felt, because of the integrity of the pulpit, these men needed to know about him.
Mm-hmm.
And what really happened. I don't know how they took it. I don't know what they did with it. I don't know. And I told them in the letter, I didn't care to know, because it's really none of my business. It's up. They can believe me or not believe me. They can choose to believe me. Do whatever they want. It's not up to me.
But you felt almost like that responsibility to at least say something.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, it was my responsibility to let these men know what was going on. Because it's supposed to be a ministry. It's supposed to be God, right?
It's a business. It's a business. Come on, Moníca.
Where is the concern for God's children? It's, I guess being out for a while, you start looking at things totally different, and and being in ministry for all these years, and then even being, the ministry, it's like, where's the integrity here? The integrity is gone. And so that's what I was addressing in these letters. And I wrote explicitly about different things, and I shared things in the letter that were very explicit and things like that. I didn't share everything, but
well, you know how you know how they responded to it? Is he still in the pulpit?
I haven't even gone to go look.
Well,
It's none of my business. It's on. I guess I figured if I wrote the letter and I let them know what was going on,
right.
there's no blood on my hands anymore.
True.
It's on them. It's on them and their decisions. They can choose what they want to do with it. It's not on my hands anymore.
They'll put it with all the other letters they've probably gotten through the years.
So I don't know what I don't know. I don't know about any of it.
Well, let's just say this. We don't know. But if one were to go look, and I may, just for my own wondering, if that person is still teaching a Bible study, leading a song service, playing a guitar, preaching a message, knocking on doors, that's gross. And we have to say it's very likely statistically that he's not the only one.
See, that's the thing. Especially, I don't think he's the only one. I really believe that with my whole heart. And the reason being is because of the general mindset of how they look at marriage. It's not a biblical viewpoint on marriage. So he thought that they believe that if your spouse leaves, that's grounds for divorce. With my first spouse, he had shortly after he had left me and abandoned my son and I, is what he did, is just abandon us.
Yes.
He had come back to me one day. He came over to the house and told me about this sexual encounter he had with this woman. And I was like, what do you he was being honest, I guess, and telling me of this sexual encounter he had with this woman that he just met, and but they didn't have intercourse. They didn't have complete intercourse. So that made it okay before God because it wasn't intercourse. So I'm like, dude, sex is sex, man. You just broke the marriage vows. Not only did you just abandon me, but I haven't even thought about divorce yet. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to get a job, and then you come to me and tell me you had this sexual encounter with this woman that you just met, and expect me to take you back?
Phew.
Yeah, no. That ain't happening. I'm not taking you back. So before God, I had a biblical reason to divorce him, my first spouse.
Yes.
So it wasn't like I was just dumping a man and just moving from one man to another.
No, I think no one listening to your story would think, Moníca. We're all sitting here like, oh, this was the time. But you can't, you know what I mean? But we're watching from the sidelines. And it's like watching a movie. I talk to movies all the time. My daughters think it's funny. And no, he's over there. Don't go there. And no, don't take him back. Look what he did to you. So.
Right. Yeah, so even though my second spouse, they may not have had sex, there are some things called emotional affairs.
Well, he pushed you around. He didn't take care of you. He did that with this woman. I mean, there's a host of reasons that.
Right. Yeah. So.
What would be your advice to women or men in NTCC who are in? Because women can be, we can be overbearing. We can be. I think women take it upon themselves that they can push around and touch and hit because they're not the stronger one. But, it can happen both ways, but mostly in NTCC, that is a man's world.
Right, it is.
It's a man's world run by men, and they'll tell you. Kekel said it in a recent message about role models, that you are the king and queen. He tried to soften it from earlier stances by saying you rule together. Why does anyone have to rule anything? Why do you have to rule your children? Why do you have to rule anyone?
That's not what the Bible says to do.
Good grief.
The Bible says that a husband and a wife are to submit to each other. And it's not just in sex.
No.
You are to submit to each other. And that the husband, the Bible talks more about what the husband's roles are and what the husband is supposed to be doing, more than it talks about what the wife and what the children are supposed to be doing.
Right.
You look up all the scriptures. It talks more about what a man's behavior is supposed to be than what a woman's behavior is supposed to be. But it doesn't get taught.
No, we don't know right now. All we know is over the pulpit. We don't know in the classes what's happening. But that seems an indicator, because back in the day, there's a lot of things that would be reserved for the classroom and not said over the pulpit to the listening public. Now, they don't care. They need people so bad in the seats. They need tithe payers. They're pushing the whole Bible school thing to the military. They're pushing to get people in. And so, I don't know, I guess they're not monitoring themselves and what they're saying. And loose lips sink ships, and I think they're sinking their ship.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion. It's, you know, for as much as you want to warn and expose this group, like warn others against the group and expose them for what they are, knowing that the group is made up of people that were in the same place we were. It's difficult to watch.
Right.
It's difficult.
It is. And not only that, but knowing that there's people in the organization that, because we've been there and we know the mindset, and because we also were ones that went at one point in time, we defended the organization and we protected the organization from our families, and when people, our family members might have questioned certain things, we defended the organization to them.
Right.
We, I did that.
We all did.
Oh no, they don't mean it this way. They mean it this, this other way. And, they're not controlling. They're just looking out for your best interest.
I want to give them all my money.
Right, because, we're,
giving it to God for His work. I don't know why those missionaries are always sick and lacking.
Why are these missionaries sleeping on the floor?
Yeah,
Why are these missionaries constantly lacking when I know how much I paid in mission pledges?
Same here.
I know how much I paid, and each and every one of us is paying hundreds of dollars toward mission pledges, and these missionaries are not getting this money. Where is the money going?
Yep. That's why when Jordan and Cantrell just went over to the Philippines, I think I might have told you recently that I was going to put together a whole thing. I started to notice that all of the churches, I think in the month of November, maybe last year or the year before, was the time frame I was looking at, they all had pastor appreciation days. And all these churches had banners made up and everything. Well, when Jordan Cantrell got to the Philippines, just how many months ago, I noticed outside of the church there was this huge banner with a welcome, balloons and streamers and goodies and all this stuff. And I was like, I hope the organization is footing the bill for that, because that is a crying shame to put that burden on these Filipinos in a third world country. Right. And that's how it is. It's a burden. It's a burden to be a part of this group. It's a burden on your wallet. It's a burden on your friendships, on your families, on your family, on your kids. On your kids while they're in, on your kids when they're out.
Yes.
It doesn't go away. It's not like
It doesn't.
you go take a shower and it's gone.
Right. It's not gone. Excuse me. It's like so the interview that somebody who had left the organization and she went under the guise of Mary,
Yes.
and she did that interview with that
Bible scribe.
Bible scholar. Yeah. When she started breaking down about the financial burden that her and her spouse were under during Bible college and stuff like that, I was shocked because I was like, I thought me and my first spouse were the only ones that had gone through something like that.
Same here. Same here.
And I was like, because you don't talk about it.
Because you don't talk about it. That's right.
You don't talk about it to other people because you're shamed.
Yes.
And so, you are not a leader if you have financial problems and all of this stuff, and you're shamed and condemned and constantly beat up. And so you just stay quiet. You don't talk about stuff like that to anybody.
Right.
And so you do feel isolated because of that. And so when she was sharing about their experiences financially, I was like, oh my God, we weren't the only ones.
Nope.
Going through this.
That's why this all resonates, Monica, because it's a shared experience. Look, Vic Johansson posted on underneath the videos about about his experience.
Right.
Being intense and everything, and
yes.
I know. I remember even when we lived. Oh, I'm sorry, honey. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I remember Vic going up to Alaska. I remember the family going up there, and I remember them staying in tents for conferences and stuff like that. I remember that, and when he brought that up, I was like, oh my God, I didn't even talk about how we didn't have furniture and how we slept on the
Yep.
It was a concrete floor with just some Berber carpet on the top of it.
Yep.
For months and
for
months and months, because we didn't have money. Like that Christmas, my son, I prayed and prayed and prayed that nobody would ask my son what he got for Christmas, because we didn't even have enough change in our pocket to go buy a candy bar for him.
That just breaks my heart. It makes me want to go give him a big Christmas present this year or something. And
and it's just things like that. And I was like, man, I responded to Vic, was like, oh gosh, you just brought up things that happened, the sacrifices that a lot of us did, and we were willing to do it, but then if they found out, we were shamed for it and belittled for it because we didn't make it happen, and we're being belittled and shamed by an individual who hasn't even gone out there and done it himself.
No, the Keckles have never, ever, that should gripe everybody that is out there laboring, especially when that morning that he was in Memphis recently for the regional conference, and he was talking about 6 months ago I said at the spring conference we were going to look at where you were at, and we have this world map in the office, and you want to get a sticker on there, like, because you earn the sticker by having accomplished so much. It's a business. It's a business, and all of your sacrifices for the Lord and everything, you get the thump on the head that you're not doing enough. He's never one time done it. She's never one time done it. I don't think she ever went to children's church, and yet she had a child, and we all had to do that out in the works. We all had to deal with the kids.
Right. Yep. Yes.
But somehow he can tell people, if you would just do it this way, it will work. Well, this way changes like every year. There's a new thing. There's a new way.
Well, the thing of it is, too, is now that they're on Facebook and noticing that all the churches have the cross in the middle and the monitors on each side.
Yep.
That is so bizarre.
Isn't it bizarre?
And I'm like, holy cow. I know that little church where I just left from in that state.
Yep.
I don't even think they have a handful of people that even go to church there, let alone tithe payers. I'm like, how did they come up with the money to buy all those monitors and to do all that stuff and the sound systems that they have now and
Yep.
everything
Sound
that's being
systems.
required?
Two screens and a sound system in some of these little dinky rooms. Just
And see, that room right there is super small.
I saw it because I looked at it from the outside, and I think they had well, when the Keckles went there recently, they showed
Yes.
pictures of the room. I was like, oh my goodness, that room is so small. No wonder why he's up there asking for money for things. Curtain for the back of the piano, that they all have that. So you don't see what? The ugly piano inner workings. It's just, it's like a McDonald's. Let's make them all look the same. They all have to look.
It's all just the show.
Has nothing to do with reaching souls. Not one thing.
I remember, it's a show, and the reason why I say that is like, so that minister that had come to take over the work there that I had mentioned earlier kind of ran everybody off.
Yes.
You know, all the preachers and the workers and stuff get to the church, you know, a half hour to an hour before service actually starts, right?
Yes.
So, you know, you're making sure things are taken care of and cleaned up and doing, you know, putzing around doing stuff. And so when you're done, you're all sitting around, standing around, fellowshipping and talking, right? Well, so we were doing that. That's kind of the scenario that was happening this Sunday morning. And then the first church member that shows up, this minister, this pastor of the church says, okay, places, everybody, places, get to your places.
What does that mean?
Everybody get to your places. Places, everybody get to your places. Like it was a production.
Wow.
Everybody had to put on their smiles and, you know, and that's one of the things that kind of woke me up. This is just a production. This isn't really how
And you know
church.
what? People notice that. People will notice that when they come in. That it's...
Right. It's not genuine.
No.
It's,
and
everybody's got their place and their thing to do, and they've got to, you know, put the smile on their face, and yeah, it's just a production. It's
how
just
weird. Hey, Moníca, we've been talking here for 2 hours and 47 minutes.
All right, wow. There we go.
This old lady has to get to bed soon.
Yes, you do.
That's okay. It's worth it. It's worth it. I took a nap earlier, so.
Okay.
I wish you could do like a ledger of your life. So you're up for this many hours, you sleep this many, take a nap, and it starts zeroing things out. But it doesn't. Just kind of makes you more tired or something.
That would actually make life a little bit easier, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it?
It really would.
I don't know. Maybe in the future that's what they'll do.
Oh, I don't know.
No. That seems very regimented.
So I will be sharing this on my personal page as well as Moníca Truthfully Speaking.
Okay, good.
Folks can check that out as well. They can find out. And on there, so I've been doing this thing where I'm checking in with folks and learning about cortisol levels and what it does to your high cortisol levels and what it does to your body and things that you can do to lower that cortisol. And
so you're going to share some of that stuff?
Yeah, so I did a check-in on Monday. Tomorrow morning I'll do another one just to kind of...
And why did I miss that? How did I miss that? Is that on your page?
It's on my Moníca Truthfully Speaking Facebook page.
Okie dokie.
I'm still in the process of trying to link my Instagram and Facebook pages together. There's some things going on. I don't understand.
Oh, Facebook's a mess right now. It's messing with even my personal page with posts and things. They're just, I have things to say about it, but I will not yield to my dark side.
And another thing too is maybe you and I hadn't talked about it, but if anybody was interested in learning how I finally figured out what was going on in the cycles I was in and why I was repeating these types of marriages and what got me into the cult and what things that I'm get into the cortisol thing, um, maybe we could do another interview.
Oh, absolutely. We have gobs of stuff. We could go ad infinitum.
Yeah.
Um,
because I think that's important.
It is important. It is very important. And you're not offering medical advice. You're just sharing your
my experiences,
yes.
What I've done. That's worked for me, and everybody's different.
Yep.
Everybody is different, and what's going to work for me isn't going to work for
and everybody should do their own research.
Exactly.
You know, don't leave it up to some dude behind a pulpit to tell you what this scripture means and what that means, and or somebody telling you to go consume this or that, like Davis used to do all the time. He used to have all these different diets he was on, and then the whole church had to do it. He didn't tell them to do it. He kind of did. Like, you're an idiot if you don't. But then 2 months later, he's on another kick. And there's all these yo-yo dieters going on, and people are a wreck.
And actually, it just makes it's worse for your body.
Exactly.
And women's bodies are so different than men's.
Yep, they really are.
So, yeah.
Yes, they are. All right, darling. What I'm going to do is shut this down. There is a place I remarked to myself that I was going to pull something out. I think I just misspoke a little. And then I'm going to load it because it will probably take a little while since it's almost 3 hours. Okay. And then we'll link up. I'll do all kinds of links tomorrow. I have to link a lot of things. I have a whole list of things that need links. Sometimes I just want to get it thrown out there. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've been pleasantly surprised of all the responses.
Me too. People have been so kind to open up themselves and tell about their own experiences. I think I was telling you earlier, just, I definitely need the days off to just decompress a bit from it, because I tend to be one of those people that what do you call it? Like you empathize too much, and it's hard not to. And
well, I've been getting messages every day.
Yeah.
Every day I'm getting messages from people, and I got one the other day from he's a young man, and he sent me a message, and he had been going. He was a church member out there. Are we still recording?
Yes. Do you want me to turn it off? I'm gonna turn it off now. No. Okay. Go ahead. Do you want to go?
So he was I know this individual, and so he had made mentions to me about how he said, "I'm glad that you're being a voice for me." And this is a young man.
Aww.
He said, "Because I was raped as a child, and you're speaking for me as well." And so this is reaching more people that are out there than just people that have been in this organization, this cult, or other cults, or women that have gone through abusive marriages and abusive situations like this. It's reaching all kinds of people that have experienced all kinds of different kinds of abuse.
Yes.
Yeah. And I didn't foresee that happening. I'm glad it is, because if it helps them heal in any way, if I can give them information to help them heal in any way, it's a plus.
Yes.
And I keep that near and dear to my heart. And he's actually, he's not the only man that has reached out to me and told me things like that.
Wow.
So I remember getting that the other morning, and I just prayed for them, and I wanted to take it on. I wanted to take this on, and God was like, "No, it's not your responsibility to take it on, but it is your responsibility to pray for them and to encourage them.
Yes. Yeah, that's a big job to try to. I think when we first got out and we were writing and then receiving gobs of emails and phone calls, and a lot of people were leaving as well during that stretch between 2006 2008, and it became like a full-time thing. and
Right.
and then we had to stop and say our daughters are getting lost in this. they've
Right.
they've come through this. They've lost all their friends. I mean, slowly they got their friends back as their parents left, but
Okay.
but um, you know, you can take on too much and actually cause some harm. And so,
Yes. Yes.
when my daughters told me that in later years, like, we resented that. I said, I know. I felt that after a time, and that's why we stopped after a time.
Yeah.
And now, though we're all grown up, there's still things that linger. And
Yeah.
for me, it's it's the it's it's the desire to do my part to warn and expose. And I'm glad that you're with me on this journey and others as well. Um,
Right.
Anybody who posts comments or their experiences, that's why I appreciate when Vic writes, because uh, he has insight to the beginnings back in St. Louis.
Right.
Up
Right.
until they were there in Graham when we arrived. So a long line of history there to draw
Right.
from, and it adds texture and it adds buttresses the points that we're trying to make. And
Right.
you know that's all we can do.
Right.
And
Right.
just like back when we did it before, we did what we could do, not expecting, because we know with ourselves it takes time. It's like a drip, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's little bits that finally crack the foundation of the
Right.
lies, and you finally realize that once that comes down, since they're talking about walls now in their
Oh.
conferences all over the place, the walls came down and we just were able to crawl
Yes.
over the rubble and get out of there.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
All right, we're 3 minutes away from 3 hours. Wowie, wow, wow, wow. Okay, get some rest, and I'll
All
let you
right.
know when this is ready.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay,
Thank
have
you.
a good night, Monica.
You as well. Bye.
Bye.